The story begins in a thick forest, where a group of chimpanzees moves peacefully. Suddenly, their leader senses danger as birds scatter. Hunters appear, capturing some of the chimps. One young chimp tries to escape but is caught and locked in a metal cage, watching helplessly as the others are left behind. Later at Gensis, a cutting-edge pharmaceutical company, a female chimp named Bright Eyes, treated with the experimental drug ALZ-112, showed remarkable intelligence improvements. She solves complex puzzles, impressing scientists Dr. Will Rodman and Robert Franklin. Will eagerly tells his boss, Stephen Jacobs, that their project is ready for human trials. They present their findings to the board, explaining how ALZ-112 can generate new brain cells and potentially cure Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. However, the drug also causes a green shine in the eyes. Back in the lab, Bright Eyes suddenly becomes aggressive. Despite Franklin's attempts to calm her with her favorite drink, she panics at the sight of a tranquilizer gun. She attacks the crew and escapes, running through the building. Crashing into the boardroom, security tragically shoots her, and she dies in front of everyone. Jacob, disappointed and fearing the worst, decides to terminate the experiment and order all test chimps to be put to sleep, ending their suffering. Later, Franklin finds a baby chimp in Bright Eye's cage, realizing she is protecting her newborn, not reacting violently to the drug. Robert does not have the heart to put down the baby and gives it to Will, who toughly decides to take the infant home. Will lives with his father, Charles, who has Alzheimer's and needs a nurse's care when Will is away. Will introduces the newborn chimp to Charles, who quickly grows fond of him and jokingly names him Caesar. Remarkably, Caesar starts feeding himself after just 2 days, showing signs of having inherited the ALZ-112 virus from his mother. 3 years pass, and Caesar, now half-grown, lives in the attic. Despite his ape-like traits, he is a loving family member who communicates through sign language. While Caesar's intellect improves rapidly, Charles's condition worsens, leading to conflicts with his nurse. Desperate, Will steals ALZ-112 from his lab and gives a dose to Charles. The next day, Will is overjoyed to find his father playing the piano flawlessly, a sign that the treatment is working. Caesar becomes fascinated by the neighborhood kids playing outside. One day, he sneaks into the neighbor's yard through a window and discovers a bike. His presence scares the neighbor's daughter, and her father, Douglas Hunsaker, attacks Caesar. Will, realizing Caesar is missing, searches and manages to find and rescue him, but not before he is injured. They take Caesar to Caroline, a vet at the zoo who treats him. Caroline is impressed by Caesar's use of sign language and his intelligence. She suggests providing Caesar with more outdoor space for his well-being and peace of mind. To calm Caesar, Will and Caroline take him to Muir Woods for some outdoor play. When they arrive, Caesar looks to Will for permission to play, extending his arm with his palm up. Will gives his consent and Caesar happily explores the trees. This experience delights Will, seeing Caesar so comfortable and relaxed in nature. 5 years pass, and Caesar grows to love his adventures in the Muir Woods. He spends his days climbing the tallest trees and enjoying the view of San Francisco. Meanwhile, Will and Caroline's relationship is getting stronger, though Caesar feels a twinge of jealousy at sharing Will's attention. Playfully, he interrupts their moments together. During one of their walks, Caesar encounters a barking dog and silences it with a fierce screech, questioning later if he's considered a pet. Will reassures him, explaining that he sees himself as Caesar's father. To help Caesar understand his past, Will takes him to Gensis, where Will reveals the story of Caesar's mother and how he came to care for him. He explains the purpose of the drug tested on Caesar's mother, which also benefited Charles, and how it led to Caesar's exceptional brain development. At home, Will confides in Caroline about his decision to save Caesar and the unintended consequences of the drug. He explains his hope to use the drug to cure Alzheimer's patients like his father. Despite her concerns, Will is determined to continue his groundbreaking work. However, Caesar, listening from the attic, is disturbed by the revelations about his past and his place in Will's life. The next morning, Caesar is visibly affected by the new information, refusing his breakfast. As Charles struggles with his worsening Alzheimer's, Caesar helps him, but a glance between Caesar and Will reveals their shared worry. Will discovers that Charles has developed antibodies against the cure, indicating a setback in their efforts to find a cure for Alzheimer's. Back at home, Charles becomes confused and wanders into their neighbor's car, trying to sit in the driver's seat and causing damage. The neighbor, Hunsaker, confronts him aggressively, unable to understand Charles's state. Witnessing this, Caesar rushes out and attacks Hunsaker, injuring him and biting off his finger. Hunsaker's daughter pleads with Caesar to stop. Caesar backs off and approaches Charles, realizing his mistake. Following the incident, Caesar is taken to a primate sanctuary by court order. Will and Caroline accompany him, saying their goodbyes as Caesar begins his new life away from home. Despite Will's concerns about Caesar's adjustment, the sanctuary's manager is optimistic about Caesar's future. However, Caesar feels abandoned and distressed, yearning to return home, but resigned to his new reality. Will can only offer words of comfort and a promise to visit soon, leaving a saddened Caesar behind. Once Will and Caroline leave, Dodge, the sanctuary owner's son, and another worker, Rodney, put Caesar in a cage with other distressed monkeys. Determined to get Caesar back, Will tries to appeal for Caesar's release but faces bureaucratic obstacles. Frustrated, he argues with the clerk, who coldly tells him to be thankful that Caesar wasn't put to sleep. At home, Charles's condition worsens and he lapses into confusion and sadness, particularly missing Caesar. Will confirms that the drug's effects have worn off, and Charles's Alzheimer's is rapidly advancing. Determined not to lose both Caesar and his father, Will convinces Stephen to resume the research to create a new virus. Will even shares that he secretly gave the medicine to his father, which showed promising results. Seeing a lucrative opportunity, Stephen agrees to support developing Alts-113, a gas-based virus evolution. At the sanctuary, Caesar endures tough conditions, such as being given bad food. Fed up, he throws the food at Dodge, who responds violently by spraying him with a fire hose. Caesar retreats into a corner of his cage. After Dodge leaves, Caesar finds comfort by drawing the attic window from his old home on the wall. At the Genesis lab, new apes are brought in to test the upgraded virus. Will selects Koba, a chimp trained to ask for food, for their first trial. However, things go awry as a terrified Koba madly knocks off Franklin's mask, exposing him to the virus. Meanwhile, Caesar is released into the main play area. He meets the alpha chimp, Rocket, who rips off Caesar's shirt and beats him. Caesar runs up a tree, but Rocket catches up, and the fight ends with Caesar falling. Before Rocket can attack again, Dodge sedates both of them. That night in his cage, Maurice, an orangutan, checks on Caesar using sign language. Surprised, Caesar learns Maurice was trained in a circus. They watch a primate being taken to Genesis. Maurice warns Caesar to be careful, as humans don't like smart apes. After a while, Will and Caroline visit, and Caesar expresses his pain through sign language. Filled with anger and frustration, Will storms over to Dodge to demand Caesar's release. Langdon intervenes, reminding Will that he needs a court order to release Caesar. Caesar pleads to go home, but Will can only promise to secure his release soon, leaving Caesar feeling betrayed. Overwhelmed by frustration, Caesar wipes out his drawing of the attic window. While exploring the enclosure, he discovers a ladder leading up to a skylight. At the same time, he notices Buck, a large gorilla who is never let out of his cage. Climbing to the skylight, Caesar gazes at the city skyline, longing for freedom. One day, Dodge and his friends visit the sanctuary and taunt the confined apes with a taser. When one friend leans in too close to bully Caesar, seeing an opportunity, Caesar cleverly steals a pocket knife from one of them. That night, Caesar uses the knife to free himself. Maurice watches as Caesar makes his way out. Caesar then opens Buck's cage, freeing him to embrace his newfound freedom. Next, Caesar frees Rocket, throwing him to the ground but sparing him any further harm. Rocket sees Buck out of his cage, and all the other apes witness the events, acknowledging Caesar as the new leader of the sanctuary. Back home, Will tries to give his father the new medicine, but Charles refuses. They share a tender moment, holding hands as they sleep. Charles passes away, leaving Will in mourning. After the funeral, Will finds a photograph of himself with Caesar, bringing his remorse to the surface. Carolyn gently suggests that it's time for him to accept that some things are beyond their power to change. At the workplace, Will discovers that Stephen has recklessly pushed the research timeline forward. Stephen is focused on profits, but Will is concerned about how the new virus will affect people. Stephen dismisses Will's concerns, so Will quits in frustration. Meanwhile, Franklin suffers from the virus's side effects, like sneezing blood. Desperate for help, he goes to Will's house but finds no one home. Instead, he meets Hunsaker and accidentally sneezes blood on him. Will tries to bribe Langdon to release Caesar, but when Will asks Caesar to come with him, Caesar refuses, feeling betrayed. Disheartened, Will leaves. Later, Caesar lets Rocket out of the cage and has him distribute stolen cookies from Dodge, one to each monkey, bringing the group together. The next day in the play area, Maurice asks why Caesar is doing this. Caesar explains that one monkey is weak, but together they are strong. Maurice calls them stupid, making Caesar think more about their situation. Caesar watches Rodney punch a code into the door lock. Later that night, he uses the code on the door lock to open and escapes from the skylight. Caesar travels back to Will's home and sees Will and Caroline sleeping. He takes the ALZ-113 gas from the fridge and returns it to the sanctuary, exposing the other apes to it. The following day, he notices the apes' eyes have green flecks, showing their increased intelligence. Langdon observes the apes acting strangely, but dismisses it. Meanwhile, Franklin is found bloodied and lifeless on his bed. That night, the apes return to their cages, but Caesar refuses. He confronts and defeats Dodge in the yard. When Dodge grabs him shouting, "Damn dirty ape!" Caesar shocks everyone by speaking for the first time, yelling, "No!" and knocks Dodge out. Caesar then proceeds to release all the other primates. Rodney tries to stop them, but gets attacked. Recognizing that Rodney never truly harmed them, Caesar spares and locks him in a cage instead. When Dodge regains consciousness and reaches for his taser, Caesar uses a hose on him. The water amplifies the electrical charge, killing Dodge. With their path clear, the apes break free from the sanctuary through the skylight. The next day, Will notices signs of recent activity in Caesar's room. Unable to reach anyone at the sanctuary, he and Caroline decide to investigate. They arrive to find the sanctuary in shambles, Dodge's lifeless body, and a punctured ALZ-113 container. Caroline discovers Rodney in a cage, and he tells them that Caesar spoke. The group of apes reaches Gensis, wreaking havoc in the labs and freeing the imprisoned primates, including Koba. Stephen receives a call informing him of Franklin's death caused by the virus. Arriving at his office, he's horrified to find the lobby in ruins with the apes looming overhead. Panicked, Stephen escapes in a helicopter. The freed apes break out and continue to wreak havoc across the city, causing extensive damage to buildings. The police response is swift, but the apes are prepared. Maurice hurls a drainage cover at a police car while Buck tosses a street lamp from the top of a cable car. Despite heavy traffic, Caesar and his team move through the city toward the Golden Gate Bridge. Realizing their destination, Will and Caroline deduce that the apes are headed toward the woods. Stephen and the officers in a helicopter overhead also observe the apes moving north. At the end of the bridge, police officers prepare to confront the apes with lethal force. Caesar halts his group and formulates a plan, directing some apes to scale the bridge while others traverse underneath it. Caroline manages to distract the police, allowing Will to sneak past them. The ensuing battle between apes and humans is intense, with Caesar and Buck engaging in direct combat with the officers. When one of the apes falls under gunfire from the helicopter, Maurice is enraged. In the thick fog, the human forces struggle to locate the apes. Utilizing a bus for cover, the guerrillas shield themselves while the apes on the bridge close in for the attack. Simultaneously, the apes on the bridge's upper and lower sections launch their assault, overpowering the humans. As the battle rages, Will manages to reach Caesar. The two share a brief understanding glance before the helicopter reappears, opening fire on the apes. In a desperate attempt to protect Caesar, Buck leaps onto the chopper, resulting in a catastrophic crash on the bridge. Caesar pulls a mortally wounded Buck from the wreckage. As Buck dies holding Caesar's hand, Stephen calls out for help. Caesar simply glares at him before leaving the scene. Emerging from the fog, Koba confronts Stephen with a fierce snarl and bared teeth. Koba forcefully kicks the wreckage of the chopper off the bridge. Stephen plummets into the abyss below, screaming as he falls. After winning the battle and clearing their path, the apes rush towards the forest. Meanwhile, Will takes a police car and follows the apes to the forest. When he arrives, he calls out to Caesar while walking, but is attacked by Koba. Caesar intervenes just in time, sending Koba away with a command. Will apologizes to Caesar and promises to protect him if he returns home. Caesar gently pulls Will close and whispers,
"Caesar is home."
Will is stunned but accepts it. Caesar walks back to the apes. standing tall and proud. The other apes regard him with respect, acknowledging him as their leader. With Will's silent blessing, Caesar ascends into the treetops, taking one last look over the San Francisco skyline. Later, Hunsaker arrives at the airport for his flight. He feels a tickle in his nose and notices a nosebleed. Casually wiping it away, he doesn't realize he is carrying a deadly virus. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications for more videos like this. We've got a lot of great content coming your way. Take care and see you again.